welcome to another edition of the Michigan Recruiting Insider Portal Edition. I mean, portal recruiting, that's what it is. It just transitions from the recruiting cycle where you're recruiting the high school recruits to portal. There's like no downtime anymore for coaches because they said, hey, we want to change this window around, move the early signing period up to the first week in December, and then get like one night of sleep, and then we're right to the portal. And that's literally like it's like the Wednesday, which is the 4th. And then that next Monday is portal time, and these dudes are going nonstop. And it's like every day, just an explosion of guys in the portal, an explosion of guys leaving your roster going in the portal. It's like their heads are spinning, trying to figure out. And then you got to worry about your backup scout team quarterback saying, I want $100,000, right? And you got to negotiate with that guy now, too. All of that's going on. And we're here to help you navigate those turbulent waters. Who is Michigan looking at? Who's coming on a visit? Who do they have realistic shot at in these positions? That's what we're here to do on the Recruiting Insider. The best crew in the land. Starting with my guy, Steve Lorenz. Steve, how are you?
Good, yeah. It's well, they say more kids have entered the portal at this point this year. This was like 2 days ago, compared to the past 2 years combined. So I mean, it's insane. I don't envy college programs trying to figure this stuff out because it's crazy. So yeah, we'll try to parse through the stuff and get you guys as informed on it as we can.
Yeah. Brice Marich, how are you, my guy?
Solid, but I have a quick question for you guys, and even the chat. I'm a little off topic. So I'm going to be out of town for Christmas. Do I give my wife her present before we leave or after when we get back?
So why would you give it to her before you leave? I don't understand. Why couldn't you give it to her?
Because it's gonna be past Christmas when I get back.
So you can't give. Is the gift so big you can't take it with you?
Potentially.
Oh. Wow. You doing it that big, Brice? That's interesting.
I didn't say how much it was.
Brice over there doing it big. Wow.
NIL money.
But see, here's the thing. If you give her the gift now, you could reap the dividends for the entirety of the
100% what I was thinking. If it's if it can't be taken on the trip with you and it has to be before or after, you have to do it before. You can't, what if something goes awry on the trip? I mean, you just no, then it'll look like you're trying to make up for a trip that went awry. No, you plant the seed heading into the trip with a nice gift and stuff and kind of get everything off on the right foot. I don't think it's much of a debate in my opinion. So
Gotcha. That's what I needed.
Yep. I'm right there with you. Right there with the before the trip, Brice.
Okay.
Speaking of, how about this? Before the show, we got to tell you who brings us to you on a show-by-show basis. We start out by thanking one of our proud sponsors, Wolverine. Wolverine boots when it comes to the blue collar work ethic that comes to represent Michigan athletics, when it comes to represent hard work. And you talk about this area that we're from and bringing it all together. That's what the Wolverine brand and Wolverine gear is all about. This is why they've become aligned with Michigan athletics and Michigan athletes. And Ben, if you can bring them to the screen right now. And this piece of apparel that I have on right now is the Wolverine University of Michigan Bucksaw hooded flannel shirt jack. I got it all in. That's right. This outstanding item would be a great holiday gift idea on sale now over at Wolverine.com. Highly recommend as a holiday gift idea. And they are offering, if you go over to the site right now, you can still get 30% off your order with code Cozy Up. With code Cozy Up. So take advantage of that. An entire line of Wolverine themed, and I'm talking about Michigan Wolverine themed gear that you can check out by going to their site, and you can see they are partnered with several Michigan student athletes across the athletic spectrum: football, basketball, all the different sports, and you can see that over on their website. And you see Donovan Edwards and Mason Graham and Colston Loveland, several of the football athletes, but across the sports spectrum, like I say, because, Wolverine and the support of student athletes via NIL, very important to them. But the blue collar work ethic that they've come to represent and how that is synonymous with Michigan athletics is what they're all about. So Wolverine.com. Get over there, shop now, get your holiday gift ideas satisfied for the Wolverines in your life, hard workers in your life as well. We are also brought to you by Passes. And in case you missed it, Passes, they are an official partner of University of Michigan Athletics and an NIL partner of Michigan Athletics, and made it possible for our now Michigan student athletes to take their brands and leverage their brands in ways they never were able to before. Now they can access, or fans can access student athletes directly. You are able to engage, you the fan, so they could take, video content that they make, fan engagement opportunities that they might have, get to fans, and maybe they have some endorsements that they have. They can put it on their platforms, and they can use the Block M. So they can take this right here, this Block M, for instance, over here, and they can use it to endorse Wolverine. They can use it to endorse Ford. They can use it to endorse anything, General Motors. And they can do it on Passes, on their Passes video platforms, in ways they couldn't do it before, thanks to their partnership with Passes, our proud sponsor right here on the Recruiting Insider, something that could not be done with partnerships before, thanks to Passes, another one of our proud sponsors. So we appreciate Passes here on the Recruiting Insider. Let's get right to it, fellas. So the portal season is here, and let's start with quarterbacks. Remember we said when they were recruiting Bryce Underwood, and when they were just recruiting Bryce, this was before Bryce committed, said they were going to pursue a portal quarterback even if they get Bryce committed. That was an understanding that, hey, we want you and we want to bring in a portal quarterback for you to compete with Bryce, and that Bryce was good with it. He's like, yeah, go get a portal quarterback because I'm going to beat that guy. But if I don't beat that guy, he could be a mentor. Now, Bryce thinks he's going to beat that guy. But this is an important thing, Steve. Like, you want a guy to sharpen him and take some of the pressure off if he's not quite ready. But you also want a guy that is good enough to win with. Ideally, a guy who started a number of games and has won some games at the Power 4 level. And we see Michigan being in the mix for some of those guys right now.
Yeah, as we say that, actually, literally, Alex Orji just officially entered the portal 30 seconds ago. There were reports he was going to do it, but now he's officially in. We knew Michigan's quarterback room was going to look radically different either way, I feel like. But, yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know if you'd call it worst case, Brice as JJ in 2021, I think, is probably what Michigan is hoping for, right? When you talk about a guy, they can bring in somebody who can win them some games, knowing all the while that there's almost no way Brice isn't going to see the field on a consistent basis in year one, right? I mean, it's just he's just too talented, he's too good not to give legit opportunities to. So, yeah, I mean, are we discussing the names yet? Are we mentioning? Yeah. So, the two that have been most consistently mentioned were Miller Moss, the USC transfer, who, at least according to it sounds like Louisville maybe trending there a little bit, right? And then Billy Edwards, the quarterback out of Maryland, who has started 7 or 8 games for them this season, played behind, you could argue, maybe the worst offensive line in the conference. You're right. I mean, definitely a struggle when you turn on his stuff from this year. He's a guy who's running for his life quite a bit. Michigan fans may remember he scored, I think, 3 tush-push touchdowns in the 2023 game against Michigan for Maryland. They brought him in to spell Talia, and 3 touchdowns. I think he had 3 carries for 3 yards and 3 touchdowns or something wacky. But either way, he's the other name that's been connected, maybe more connected now than Moss really ever officially was, as far as since he's entered the portal. But yeah, I mean, he's probably the name for fans to keep the closest eye on, and really fits that bill, right? As a guy who I think, surrounded by a higher level of talent, could find some legitimate success, but isn't somebody I think that's going to keep Brice off of the field all 4 quarters throughout the season. So again, if you're Michigan, that's what you want to do.
Yeah, man. You want a guy, and this is important, Brice. I mean, your field is really limited here. I mean, you're looking for a one-and-done guy who is willing to compete with a 5-star guy that the fans are going to clamor for. A 5-star guy that the first mistake you make, everyone's going to say, hey, put Brice in, right? That's smoke that not a lot of one-and-done guys are going to be willing to put up with, willing to take on. So that takes a unique individual. And you think about it, some guys are going to want a more sure thing. They don't want to have to be concerned with even the possibility that a coach might feel pressure to play a 5-star guy, let alone the number 1 guy in the country like Brice, or a hometown guy at that in Bryce Underwood.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. He's the number 1 player. It's not even just he's a 5-star. He's the number 1 player. I mean, look at all the attention Rashawn Gary got when he got to Michigan. I mean, just magnify that times 10. I mean, it's going to be incredible. And what everyone says too, who's their favorite player? It's the backup quarterback. So when the backup quarterback also happens to be a 5-star, like you said, homegrown talent like a Bryce Underwood, it's going to be tough. And I think too, and this is just my opinion, you guys might disagree with me, right now, and this obviously can change. It's probably changing as we're speaking, but I'm not a huge fan of the transfer portal quarterbacks currently in. I'm not saying they're not good, but if you look at kind of last cycle, when you had Cam Ward and Dylan Gabriel, you had some like top quarterbacks in there. And so I guess the other question, like you mentioned, Sam, if Michigan hypothetically could have got one of those guys last cycle, do you think a Cam Ward would have came to Michigan if he knew Brice was here already? That's kind of what Michigan's dealing with.
Yeah.
And it's like you look at Billy Edwards, who's a guy that competed in Maryland. He can run, he can throw. He's playing in bigger games against top competition. Miller Moss has done the same. He played against Michigan. He's played against top competition. He's shown the ability to, especially with his arm, do damage. And then there's a third guy. Now, this is a guy I think they have a very, very outside shot with. And I don't know how he would really factor into Michigan, but Fernando Mendoza, he's a quarterback for Cal. He threw for over 3,000 yards, 16 touchdowns, 6 interceptions this year for Cal. 6'5", 220. He's more of a thrower than passer, but he can run. This is a guy that I think both parties have had communication, have been in contact. But the problem with him, he's going into his junior year. So at that point, you're almost essentially banking on him, or he is, if he were to come to Michigan, being essentially a one and done, right? So if he came to Michigan, he's going pro. There's no, ifs and or buts what that would be. So he's interesting in that regard. But I think the 2 names that Steve pointed out obviously are the front runners in that competition of getting a starter level, quality quarterback, throw him the portal, but that could change, right? And I know with your report, Billy Edwards, he's going to be coming up Monday, and maybe things move quickly from there, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's intriguing, those one and done underclassmen types, because listen, those guys, it does put them in the mix. When you think about it, it's just the the older guys, the seniors. Well, no, it's not just that. A guy like Mendoza, hey, that's a one more year guy. He's not going to spend his last 2 years in college. If he's thinking about it, he's like, I got 1 year left, and I'm going pro, and that's it. Now, the tough part of it from the Michigan perspective is, like, do you feel like this is the best case scenario? You're pitching it, if you're Michigan, like you're going to be putting together the best offensive sort of circumstance to present him to the NFL. Are you going to be able to pitch that as well to him? See, the advantage that you have in the Billy Edwards race, like right now, it seems like your top competition is Wisconsin. He's visiting Wisconsin before Michigan. All right. They just fired their OC, Phil Longo. Now, who did they pick? Who did they hire? I'm trying to remember who they hired to replace him. Can't remember who they hired to replace him. But you also have a real big time advocate in Josh Gaddis. Like, Josh Gaddis is going to support you, or is supporting you, if you're Michigan, right? And clearly, Gaddis and Billy Edwards are close. Like, they are cool. They are tight. Like, you can see in this. He put up a tweet. Gaddis put up a tweet about how much he clearly believes in Billy Edwards. And I don't think it's any coincidence that, they talk about Billy Edwards being put on the bench. I think you can glean from Gaddis's tweet that wasn't Gaddis's decision. Like, Gaddis was obviously let go by Loxley, and I think there was a point in the season where it looked like Loxley started pushing the buttons. So I think there was a point in the season where Loxley started, running he started doing the thing. So I think he started calling offense, and he started, I'm doing it with another quarterback. And I think that's largely the reason why Billy Edwards is leaving. I say all of that to say you have someone in Josh Gaddis who is helping you in your courtship of Billy Edwards, helping you sort of grease the tracks while you're in flux offensively, putting in a new OC, trying to tweak your passing game. You need some help with that. You got a guy in Gaddis who will say, hey, believe in Sharon. Believe he's going to get it right. They're going to get you right. You don't necessarily have that with a guy like Mendoza. Makes it a tougher sell, right? So he's probably their best shot. And what I like about him, Steve, is I have been hearing that he was okay. He's okay. And you can see the for those who are watching here on YouTube, you can see Gaddis saying, and I'll read it for those who are listening. Josh Gaddis tweeted, love this dude, talking about Billy Edwards. Love this dude like a little brother. You can't find a better teammate, leader, or worker than this kid. Smartest QB I've ever been around, and he will definitely be an OC one day. The best days are in front of him, and he is a program changer. That is not a guy who benches this dude at the end of the season. You can glean from that. He didn't do it, Steve. He didn't bench this guy. Mike Loxley benched that guy.
Yeah, no, pretty. Don't know how you bench a guy you're calling a program changer, right? I mean, yeah, it seems a little counterintuitive. So, yeah, I think the other thing too is Edwards fits a lot of what Chip Lindsey seems to really like to do offensively as well. He's really good in the short to intermediate passing game. I believe they threw a lot of screens at Maryland too. I think we'll actually see Michigan develop a little bit more of a screen game going forward. Of course, it's got to be the year after Donaven leaves, which is the most infuriating thing I think I can remember for a year. I mean, he would have been a monster in the screen game. But anyway, so there's a fit from that end of it too. So, yeah, I mean, like we said, I agree with Brian. I mean, obviously, at this point, the portal entries for this period have not been nearly what they were last cycle, but it's so difficult as a program, like for anybody, like the timing of all, like, do you wait and see if someone, you can only do so much vetting. We know it goes on. We know we know that schools sometimes have an idea of who's entering, who's not, but you also can't sit on your hands too long because then you might really be screwed over. So, it's an interesting situation when it comes to these roster additions, but I think given the circumstances, given where Michigan's at, Edwards feels like a pretty solid fit as a guy who could be more than just a stopgap between next year and then when Brice, again, like you said, Sam, and I mean, he's a competitor. Brice thinks he's going to win the job either way. That's the kind of kid you want to bring on your roster. But just if he doesn't win it right off the gate, whatever, you have somebody who like we've said, maybe wasn't surrounded by the best cast at Maryland as far as especially up front and would thrive a little bit more in what Michigan's current system is.
And I was saying before producer Ben put up the tweet, I like that he is seemingly just like, I'll come in and compete with Bryce Underwood. Right. And, I was picking up kind of vibes from out west about Miller Moss, kind of giving that kind of posture, giving that kind of vibe early on before he went in the portal. Those were the rumblings kind of coming from out west. Like Miller Moss is going to jump in the portal and like he's liking Michigan. He's looking at Michigan even if they get Bryce. That's why we were talking about it. Like we weren't just pulling that out of thin air, just mentioning Miller Moss's name. We were getting from real good sources out there. He's going to jump in the portal before he was benched. And so, this was not just a product of him getting benched. But once he got in the portal, I don't know if it was because the interest is what it was, or did he just realize Brice is that guy? I don't know. But once he got in the portal, it's totally different. or maybe people's understanding of how he would feel was just off. I don't know. But, Billy Edwards' sort of vibe about the whole thing is clear. Like, hey, I compete with that dude. So, I like that. I like that vibe and that posture. And that's not easy to come by if you're Michigan. So they're getting him on campus on Monday. I imagine the push will be strong. If they can't wrap it up, you certainly keep your iron in the fire. Fernando Mendoza, you try to push on that. That just seems like it's going to be awful tough because, the market is going to be strong, is really strong. And then the guy that we also talked about on Dimes, and this is more of a flyer that was initially thrown out, and I got to give credit to Devin Gardner and Al Borges. They saw him in a game, and I want to say it was Boise State, Nevada. Ben, did Boise State, Nevada play? Was that the game? Yes, he's shaking his head. Producer Ben. They saw him in that game, and they said this quarterback from Nevada who just entered the portal, Brendon Lewis, balled out. He is in the portal now and dual threat guy, and he is really good. I think he would be he would be an outstanding pickup. I know Michigan knows his name. I know that that he's something a guy that they are looking into. I don't know that there's been contact, though. I just know that he's a guy that they're looking into. So we'll see if anything develops there, but that would be an intriguing one if they decide to pursue him. So we'll see. But moving on, fellas, Brice, receiver recruiting. This has been a position that they have been that we've seen, action as far as campus visits. We talked about that before already.
Yeah, so Michigan's been recruiting a couple guys from the portal, and they've been out there. Donaven McCulley, he's a wideout from Indiana. He's been up to campus. Michigan feels like they're in a pretty good spot. There's a couple other competitors in the mix there. We'll see kind of where things go. And on top of that, Michigan also has offered Joseph Williams. He's a wideout from Tulsa. He was a freshman. He was the freshman of the year in the AAC. So there's a lot to like. You could see there's an emphasis on bigger wideouts, right? And guys that have also produced, right? I think when you're looking at the portal, there's two ways I feel like you can go about it. You can go about it with potential, seeing kind of guys and what their potential might be, and guys that have really produced. And these are two guys that have really produced at that level. One guy, like I said, Williams, who's only done it for 1 year at Tulsa. That's enough for Michigan and Ron Bellamy to say, guess what? I want to offer him. So as much as I really like this recruiting class of Andrew Marsh and Jacob Washington and Jamark Browder, they still want to add more bodies to that room. And obviously there's a emphasis on taller, bigger, stronger wideouts. And I think that's what you're seeing them attack on the portal as we speak.
Yeah, a lot of questions about a familiar name in the portal at the receiver position, taller, faster wideout, and that's Andrell Anthony. I do think there's some interest in Drell, but I don't think that it's a slam dunk thing because there's a valid point made. He is an upperclassman, but he's a unique upperclassman in that his credits would transfer, right? Because a lot of his credits are Michigan credits, right? So he would be fine. But I think that I think that it's a deal where they are, you have to really thoroughly vet kind of where he is physically, because I don't think he played much of the season, and so I think there's some you got to kind of see where he is. I see where he is because you're still rolling the dice, and that Drell's super talented. I think really great relationship with Ron Bellamy. I still think that he has a world of potential. I just think the Michigan is in a position right now where they gotta find them some guys with some big time production on their resume, and maybe if they get a couple of production guys, maybe you can take a flyer guy too. But they got to get a couple of production guys first. Steve, that's just a predicament that they're in. Like they can't afford to whiff, right? Let's assume for the sake of argument for a second that Brice is your quarterback. You gotta get him a go-to guy. You gotta get him some receivers that have done it, that he can lean on. You gotta get him some guys that have gone hard in the paint already, right? So, I mean, they're just in a spot right now where they got to go get some proven commodities at this level, at as high a level as possible as they can at this point.
I mean, it's got to be the number one need, right? Because you can't count on, even if you get hit as far as first year production, if you hit on one of the three freshman guys, the odds that you're going to hit on all three are incredibly low. You can't gamble in that situation. Tyler Morris, who's been the most productive receiver this year, has already entered the portal. I mean, so you're even with him leaving, it's like, not that I don't think he was going to be a number one guy, right? But that's some production you would have brought back for a guy you could at least rely on. So yeah, I mean, they're in a mode where they need to add at least 2 guys that have produced at the college level, or at the very least guys who appear to be on the upswing at producing at the college level, right? And I think the kid from Tulsa specifically is one who came out and had a big freshman year and is a guy now who really, that's the one thing though so far. I just looked at our transfer portal rankings. There are quite a bit of receivers in there. It is a position where there are a lot of names. So you kind of feel like with Michigan's change in offensive philosophy, desperation, you're bringing in Brice. Brice is going to be any part of your pitch, saying like, this kid's a phenom. He can get you the football. Got to think Michigan can pull in some guys. It's just a matter of who. I mean, like, I'm pretty sure that they've at least put feelers out for Deuce Robinson, the USC transfer. But again, he's the number 2 overall player in the portal. Every team in the country is probably going to be, that dude's different. I mean, he's legit 6'6". I think he caught a touchdown against Michigan, if I remember correctly. So yeah, I mean, he'll be a hot commodity. He's one, like I said, I'm pretty sure Michigan has kicked the tires on that one, but not one you look at as far as maybe like a totally realistic option. But either way, yeah, I mean, again, it's always difficult for him. He's done a good job in the circumstances. It's just always so difficult where it's like, how do you are pitching at the same time a new OC, new quarterback situation. Like, it's just, how do you get kids, to commit to something like that? He's just not that it can't be done. It's a lot more difficult for Ron at receiver than it is for almost any other position on the roster, even when it is like such a legitimate need.
Yeah, they kicked the tires. So here's one that I need to mention. They've kicked the tires on Dane Key. Remember, they recruited Dane Key really, really hard. They were in really strong shape for Dane Key, but he's a Lexington kid. And come on, man. Yeah, you're recruiting against the hometown team, right? So he stays home in Lexington and goes to Kentucky, where he plays for 3 years. And now it's like all of Kentucky's top guys, which we're going to talk about another one of Kentucky's top guys here coming up. But all of Kentucky's top guys are going in the portal, including Dane Key, which is why, this is one of the exceptions to my rule, where generally speaking, I'm steering clear of like the high star guys in the portal, because I think you're paying mostly for potential with the high star guys in the portal, but you got to pay attention to the circumstance. Right now with Kentucky, I just think they're top guys. Kentucky's as a roster right now, their top guys are going in the portal. That's just a Kentucky thing. So I'm looking at their guys. Dane Key is a ball player. The problem in Dane Key's case, as if assuming that you can get him interested, which I think you can probably, because there was a great relationship. I think he had a really strong affinity for Michigan. He's an upperclassman. And so can you get past the hurdle of the credits transferring? And I just don't know if that's something that they're going to be able to get past in this particular instance to even make it be a relevant conversation. I only bring him up to say that they kicked the tires, and it may not even get anywhere beyond that. It may not have gotten anywhere beyond that. Like, hey, we're over here, and hey, I did like y'all, but does it even make sense to look any farther if I'm going to lose 20, 30 credits or however many in transfer? Only 60 of my credits will transfer to Michigan, and I have, 84, 85. I'm not trying to drop, a whole year. I'm not trying to drop a whole year of college to come. No, I'm not trying to do that. Like, it was amazing that Shea Patterson did that. It was amazing that he did that. Most guys won't do that. So, but they did kick the tires with Dane Key. So if we hear anything else along those lines, we will certainly let you know. Moving on, let's talk. Let's stay with, since we're talking Kentucky, let's stay with Kentucky and talk defensive linemen, as Michigan is a player for one of the top defensive linemen in the portal who happens to hail from Kentucky. One of you guys, whichever one of you guys wants to take it away, let's make that segue.
I'll just throw him out there. Keeshawn Silver, 6'4", 336 pounds. He's kind of a clone of Kenneth Grant. I mean, he's a big dude. He can move. He played right alongside a familiar name, and Deion Walker, a guy that Michigan fans are. Imagine if they had got him with Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. That would have been. You would never have ran. Maybe Ryan Day would have, but still. But this is a guy that Michigan knows there's a need up front in the interior of their defensive line. And we talk about the higher up guys like Steve mentioned with Deuce Robinson. I think we have him ranked the 32 overall player in the transfer portal, and the number 4 defensive lineman in the portal for us. So he's going to be one of your big timers if you were to land him. So take that for what it's worth. They're working to get him up on campus. He's been, Louis Basile has kind of been the one in charge of that recruitment, obviously defensive line coach. And I think it's an easy sell for me personally, because if I'm him, I'm saying watch the NFL draft. We're going to have at your position 2 guys go extremely high. We're going to get handsomely paid. What more do you want? And for a guy like Silver, who is not one of these underclassmen, he's probably looking to go pro, right? This is not a guy that's probably going to stay much longer. So it's like, if you're trying to get to the next level, look what we do up front. Look what we can make happen. It's a match made in heaven, but he's going to have, you talk about competition, he's got the who's who after him. So that's one name. I think you're going to see that board kind of get expanded. I think one other thing that people need to kind of also look at, there's teams still playing college football right now that I think Michigan and any team in general are going to look at their rosters at guys that maybe they didn't play this year and they're on the team, and they're just waiting to go in the portal, because the portal does not close till the 28th of December. So there's a long amount of time that we could see more names enter. But this is one of the more prominent names up front that Michigan fans should know about.
Yeah, Steve, this is one of the positions where it is clear that Michigan has made the decision. We got to spend. Like, great discussion in case you missed it. And I'm going to write this up, by the way, because not everyone watched the signing day show. But a great discussion on signing day with Sean McGee, Michigan's general manager, about, how he was sort of assigning values to positions and players like the NFL does with the salary cap. And so you're losing the best defensive tackle of all time at the University of Michigan, and Mason Graham, and maybe a close second in Kenneth Grant, likely, right? And so you got to go out and try to get as close to that as possible in the portal, knowing that you aren't going to get their level. So you got to spend. You got to pay for Rayshawn Benny. I'm going to talk about this coming up. First, you got to keep Rayshawn Benny, and then you got to go out and you got to spend top dollar in the portal. So this is another place where I say, you got to spend for the stars and the stats. And this is where, when you're talking about it at this particular position and this particular guy, this is where it makes sense. And you can see it in this particular recruitment.
Well, and the trenches are there's less volume of legit plug and play type guys, both up front defensively and offensive line. I mean, offensive line, especially tackle. I mean, that's going to be a tough spot to find like a true plug and play or potential improvement there. So yeah, I mean, it really is. Well, it's market dictated, right? I mean, a guy like Keeshawn Silver is probably gonna, even if he's similarly ranked to where do we have him, Brice, in the 30s or 40s
32.
overall? He's
Yeah,
probably
32
gonna make.
overall.
He's probably gonna command more money than receivers and backs and stuff that are similarly ranked for us, just because there's such a smaller pool of elite guys at that position. So yeah, it's another area like resource delegation, right? I mean, there's just so many wrinkles, and I got to assume you almost have to basically like create a budget per position, right? I mean, you have to go off your own need, you have to go off what's available, you have to go off how important that given position is. So, yeah, I think for Michigan though, Silver was a guy who, when he entered the portal immediately, you knew Michigan was gonna. That was a guy Michigan was gonna make a run. I don't really remember if they were a big factor because he committed and signed with North Carolina out of high school. Believe he's from a town like northeast of Raleigh, kind of a small town kid. That's one of the other reasons why I'm not sure Michigan was a huge factor from the get-go with him. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure they've taken a swing at Jaheim Otis from Alabama. He'll, a kid from Mississippi. He'll probably stay down south. But it is different where, I gotta go back and look at last year. But those guys that Michigan was recruiting up front in the portal, I don't really remember any of those guys making a huge impact for their respective teams, like a CJ West or a Javier Suggs. Like, I don't remember reading much about those guys making an impact at their respective schools. Silver does feel like more of a guy they could get in, and he would probably be depending on who stays and who goes, he'd probably be your number 2 guy alongside Benny, right? Provided that you can keep him on board. So yeah, there's just not a ton of the fights, the recruiting battles for those guys, defensive tackle, offensive tackle, are going to be fierce because there's just not a large number of difference makers at those positions available.
Yeah, that's why you got to pay top dollar to keep Rayshawn Benny, and I think they're going to do that. And then here's the buzz, and I can't remember if I mentioned this. I can't remember if I know I was talking about this in a thread on the board at some point. I get lost in threads on the board, right? But Jaishawn Barham, like you gotta think about when how much you are going to pay your guys, how much you're going to ratchet up your price. The buzz coming from NFL types on Jaishawn Barham is go back to school. You can come out and he'll get drafted on the measurables alone. But the buzz on him is that he's going to be a Micah Parsons type. So Micah Parsons, linebacker in college, but in the pros, he's an edge that they move around the line of scrimmage. Go back to college and be that. Go back to college and be Micah Parsons. And your draft stock will go up. So to me, if I'm Michigan, I not only pay him to come to be that. I mean, I not only pay him to come back, I pay him and offer him the option to be that, because that's what I'm hearing from scouts or hearing from agents is, hey, the scouts are saying this dude is going to play the Micah Parsons role in the NFL. So I'm factoring that into my portal pursuits first as I'm looking at defensive line and sort of your edge targets. Hey, maybe now Jaishawn Barham is an edge guy And I got to think about that in my linebacker recruiting, right? If he's an edge and I can get him back and that helps me get him back, now I got to go out and fortify my linebacker recruiting, which in the end, Steve and Brice, it might be easier to go out and find a linebacker than it is to find an edge. It might be cheaper, as a matter of fact, to go get a linebacker from the portal than it is to go get an edge from the portal, right? So I that's what, at least for me, not being a Sean McGee, that would be my approach, Brice.
It's essentially kind of what he did in the pros, right? I mean, coming from a front office there and looking at numbers and crunching contracts to now coming over here and doing with NIL and positional value. Like you mentioned, quarterbacks are going to rein in big money. I'd say corners, if you need a lockdown corner, defensive tackles, offensive tackles, and I would say edges, like those positions right there. Yeah, you're going to get the big numbers. And like you mentioned, like a linebacker, I feel like you could find a ton of linebackers. Wideouts, I feel like you could find a ton of them. And you're kind of seeing that in the portal in terms of number-wise. Like, there's a lot of wideouts and there's a lot of linebackers, and it's also, too, are you paying certain guys? You're looking at potential. Are you looking at production? Are you looking at kind of a little mixture of both? You're just not going to find, like when I was just scanning the defensive linemen that are in the portal right now, right ahead of Keeshawn Silver is Bear Alexander, a guy that's been in the portal a couple times that has not been fabulous during his college career, but he's going to get a nice landing spot simply because there's not many 6'3", 320-pounders that can move like him. There's just not.
Yeah.
It is what it is. It is what it is. You can find a 6'1", 195-pound wideout from anywhere, but you're not going to find a guy that can bench press this and move laterally like this and do this at that size. You just don't find them. So that's why they're going to command the kind of money market that you're going to see. And like you mentioned, you're going to have to spend at certain positions, and this is one where you're going to have to spend.
Yeah, what do you think? What do you guys think about Bear Alexander? That's one of those where I'm like, man, you got to be really, really interesting, intriguing, talented, super talented athlete. You feel like there's a lot there, but boy, I am placing a premium on going for the guys who have the most production. I am leaning more towards the guys who have more stats than stars, is kind of how I'm looking at it. Unless it's a circumstance like Kentucky, where it's like, okay, I see all of Kentucky's guys kind of making the move, and Kentucky had a good defense, right? Kentucky's had good defenses for several years, or at least decent defense, whereas not so much at USC. You know what I mean? What do you guys think about that? That's just how I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, also with Bear Alexander, I mean, this would be the 7th different school he's played for in 7 years.
Oh.
All 4 years of high school was at a different program.
Oh.
This will be his third college. This would be his third college in 3 years. Like, I don't doubt talent. I don't think talent is the issue, maybe necessarily. I just don't know if that's a road that Michigan. I guess I'd put it this way. It just, maybe you guys agree. If Jim was still coaching Michigan, that's not even a conversation. Like, this isn't even a conversation, right? I tend to think it'd be the same with Sharon, but we'll see. I mean, I just, that just immediately, though, 4 different high schools, 3 colleges in 3 years. It's like, I just don't know if that's a road Michigan really wants to go down. Especially, honestly, the other reason is because there are other schools that are like that are pursuing him already. So not only is it a kid do you think is even a fit from the get-go, but do you want to be bidding, or like you want to be up against other programs? Like, you know what I mean? Like, how much is that worth to you to roll the dice in that situation, right. So I don't know. Put it this way: Georgia got mentioned right off the bat, and their guys like ran to the board, and were like, "Nah, there's no way that Kirby Smart would bring him back on." So
I didn't realize it was that many schools. Wow.
yeah, 4 high schools in 4 years, which all over the country too. I think. I mean, he did IMG. I think So Skyline High School. I feel like one of them was like in. I don't know, but yeah, quite a wild. He also, I don't know if you guys remember, but during the SC game, he had, I don't know who it was. It was like a family member or something saying, like, that he was better than Mason Graham.
What?
And yeah,
I do know. I do remember that. Okay.
Yeah,
it was during
the game.
It was after
it.
It.
Whatever. Yeah, but he got.
But he essentially said, Sam, that he had posted Bear Alexander's recruiting profile on 24/7.
That's what.
And Mason Graham's profile, and said, "Look who's ranked higher," and he just got torched in the comments because it was like,
wait, who said that?
I can't remember who it was. Was his
family member?
Could have been his dad. Honestly, I don't remember.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but he got torched.
Said that Mason Graham was better, and then he posted side by side pictures of their 24/7 recruiting profiles. You know, and Mason Graham is going to be top 3-4 pick in the NFL draft next year, right? So it's just like, you know, feels like a situation that doesn't really vibe with what Michigan likes to do.
No. There's some some lower level guys who have production. I'm actually looking into one, as a matter of fact, that I'll get into on the board a little bit later. You can check it out on MichiganInsider.com. That some Big Ten schools, some other Big Ten schools have shown interest in, and I think Michigan has put feelers out for. I want to do a little bit more research before I kind of talk about them here on the show. But it kind of gets to what I'm talking about. I'd rather go for a smaller school guy that has put up stats like production versus the guy who has a lot of stars and doesn't have the stats. I'd rather
Josiah Stewart,
right? Exactly.
Michigan. Michigan's done a pretty good job of. I mean, look at how Amir Hall finished this season. Right? I mean, it took him a little, or a Josh Wallace. I mean, Michigan has done a pretty good job of like parsing through maybe the bigger names and some of the bigger programs who have guys that exit, right? And finding guys who can be productive for them. So, you know, because this is really just a different type of recruiting. There are still going to be hidden gems within the guys that enter the portal, you feel like, right? There's so many different, maybe it was a guy who didn't get a lot of opportunity at a bigger school. Maybe it is, like a guy at a smaller school who produced, but other bigger schools don't really trust that production. You know, there's like a whole another, it's basically just like recruiting just college players instead of recruiting kids out of high school. You know, all the same caveats and stuff can apply. So I agree, Sam. I think proven production is, especially once you get to this level, it's different in high school. You know, the kid who runs for like 8,000 yards at like a Division 8 school is not going to get like Power 4 offers probably. But once you get to the college level, these guys know what they're looking for on tape. And then if the production goes along with that, that can be a, you know, experience production can really go a long ways, even if it's your third or fourth guy.
All right, folks. So Passes and Passes.com, our proud sponsor, is an official NIL partner of Michigan Athletics, and they have made it possible for Michigan student athletes to leverage their likenesses in ways that they weren't able to before. A platform. They can platform themselves. They can take their content and their content creation and use the Passes platform to engage you directly. And so now they can put their content that they create on the Passes platform. You can go there and you can view it. They can put their merch on the Passes platform, and you can access it and purchase it in that way. It's your direct route, your direct access point to the Michigan student athlete in a way that you never had before. Engagement in a way, access in a way that you never had before through Passes. But you have to engage. You have to get your membership. You can do that at passes.com. This is your way to do your part NIL wise as well. So much of what happens with NIL comes from major donors and their support. This is your way as a general fan, as a regular fan, to support student athletes directly by subscribing to Passes. And when you do that, your proceeds, your fee, can go directly to the student athlete, right? So you, through your membership, and that portion of your membership fee, through your engagement with the student athlete and your purchase of their merch directly, can go to that student athlete. This is how you support the programs and the student athletes via NIL through Passes. So go to passes.com and support the team and support Michigan in that way. Home of Team 146. And of course, as we've been saying, built for those who stay. This is how you do it. This is how you support. So join now. This is unique. No other program in the country is doing it this way with Passes. None. And through you, you can help Michigan student athletes directly in ways that no other program is doing it. So sign up right now at passes.com. Let's go over to offensive linemen now and start right here with a Michigan native, Brice, that see on campus here. Michigan, one of the top schools for another maybe cross Big Ten transfer, right?
Yeah, it's almost, I don't want to say becoming a pipeline school, but they're having a lot of luck right there with Josh Preeb. When we're talking about Josh Thompson, 6'5", 300 pounds. He's one of the top transfer portal linemen right now for 24/7. He's ranked 48 overall in the portal and the number 5 interior lineman as well. He's got big time schools after him: Ohio State, Michigan. I know Michigan State. He's mentioned, I think some schools down south. He's got quite a few schools he's looking at. And we actually talked about him before we started the podcast, but Michigan right now, I would say, feels pretty comfortable there, feels in a pretty good spot, but they're not taking this one for granted. This is not like a slam dunk. I think they feel good, but not great, right? They want to get him up to campus, which that's expected to happen later on. But he's taking these other trips, Sam, very serious. He's looking at them. And when it comes to transfer portal, especially how recruiting is now as well for high schoolers, one visit, one conversation, one phone call can change a lot. So as much as you feel good at one moment, things can obviously change, right? A new school can enter the mix and maybe double whatever you're thinking, and all of a sudden then the kid and his circle says, as much as maybe I would love to stay home, I'm willing to take a flight here or there. So there's a lot that could happen, but right now, that's a guy named to really keep an eye on. I think Michigan as well feels good, and he would be, in my opinion, a plug-and-play player as well.
Steve, you'd think the hometown advantage, home state advantage counts for something, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think it does. I would probably peg Michigan as the favorite in this one. I think he'll be on campus like early next week or so, if I remember correctly. So, yeah, I wonder. I'd still maybe go through the process a little bit if I was an under-recruited kid out of high school, right? You never really know what else you might see. But at the end of the day, yeah, Fenton's like 45 minutes from Ann Arbor. I believe the family grew up Michigan fans. Michigan has opportunity there. There's need. So, all of those things that usually go in Michigan's favor with something like this are going in their favor. So, yeah, if I was like handicapping it, I would probably put Michigan at the top. And yes, the proximity, the fandom, all play a factor in that type of stuff.
Yeah, listen. One thing to me, when you look at Northwestern, offensive linemen at Northwestern, not quite like tight ends at Iowa. If we're talking about the sort of like the mid-tier schools, the middle of the road schools in the Big Ten or the Big Ten West. We'll call them Big Ten West schools, old Big Ten West. But kind of close to it. Like they were doing offensive linemen well under Kurt Anderson. Like, so you go get an offensive lineman from them, you're doing something, in my opinion. Josh Preeb was a good pickup. He was in a bad year for the offensive line. I would say he was their most consistent guy. And that's saying something to be a transfer. So, to me, this is a dude when you look at, and just to give you an example of their track record, I mean, they beat Michigan for Peter Skoronski, first round draft pick. They had Rashawn Slater before that, first round draft pick. Right? They've had dudes. They got Caleb Tiernan now, who they beat Michigan for. They get guys. And so this is the latest one. And now look at who they're competing with for him. I mean, you got Ohio State all over him, right? The top schools for Josh Thompson right now would be Ohio State, Michigan State, Michigan, I would say. Now, he's going to visit the Southern schools. So, Court and Bam are on him. I'm trying to think of who the other one. Her LSU was in there as well. But he was going to take a Southern tour. And I'm like you, Steve. I think that because he was under-recruited, he's going to actually have the experience. And that's why I'm not ready to count the Southern schools out. He might go down there and get wowed and be like, this is unbelievable, because he didn't have that experience at all. So we gotta wait and see what that's all about. But I just think a kid from Fenton to have the opportunity to go to Michigan, man, I think that's gonna be hard to turn down. So I think Michigan is gonna be tough to beat. Now that's not the only, because they got to totally revamp this line, Steve. So that's not the only iron they have in the fire. Where else might they look at this point?
Oh, well, they definitely want to look at tackles. Couple more interiors too. I believe the kid from Liberty, Jordan White, is another guy they're looking at. Can't remember the name. There's a tackle out of Vandy. I'd have to go back and look and find his name. Is another more of a tackle. Sawyer, I believe his last name is. A highly touted kid who's getting a lot of looks. I think Florida State, some others are involved there. One guy who entered, I was a little bit curious to see if Michigan, I don't think they're going to. I don't know if you guys remember the name Xavier Chapin or Chaplin. Michigan was, so Sharon, Michigan was the only, I think Louisville maybe, were the only 3 Power 5 schools that offered this kid out of high school. Michigan Sharon offered late. I can't remember if he came up. I think he was supposed to come up. Anyway, he is probably going to be the consensus number 1 offensive tackle. And this dude is massive. I'm kind of curious to see if they make a phone call, just because Sharon was literally one of the only offensive line coaches in the country that recruited this kid out of high school. He just entered a couple days ago, I think, officially. So he's from like Nowheresville, South Carolina. Like, I'd be curious to know the backstory of how they found him in the first place. But Virginia Tech is where he eventually signed, transferred out of there. He doesn't have a grade up with us yet, but he will probably, I'll be very surprised if he's not a top 10, top 12 overall player in the portal. But either way, though, yeah, I think both interior and tackles they're looking pretty much across the board, really like they always are. Even when they have guys coming back and stuff, the offensive line is always a place I feel like Michigan is looking to improve or get a little bit better, get a little bit deeper. So Yeah, but the two, Thompson and White, are the two names that have been, I think, connected to Michigan the most at this point, with a few other guys on the periphery. And again, it'll be interesting. Maybe some new names pop up, but yeah.
Yeah, man, it's going to be interesting to see. We also know that Michigan is going to look corner. They're going to look corner in the transfer portal for sure. And, one of the big disappointments in last year's portal cycle was, they were in the thick of it for a couple of sort of high profile guys, and they fizzled. One of them was Terrence Brooks, and that one wound up being kind of a consolation prize. And in retrospect, they're probably glad that one didn't work out. Terrence Brooks wound up going to Illinois and not really playing. Did you guys notice that? He went to Illinois and it didn't really work out. One guy the top guy on the board though, and I don't know how much we really talked about this, but man, when I say they worked hard, I mean they were all over it. It came close, and he was pondering going in the portal. And this was one of those things that we were hearing from agents about it, was Tacario Davis. Tacario Davis was looking hard at Michigan. He was looking hard at the Wolverines. And it never really came to fruition. And when I say this was one where, I'm talking about when I say it was a disappointing outcome, that one of the more disappointing scenarios of almost, how you hear those rumblings behind the scenes of, I'm talking about players talking. This is one of those players recruiting, not the coaches. I'm talking about players recruiting. Man, players are putting in work. Players are putting in a whole lot of work, and it didn't come to fruition. Well, now Tacario Davis is in the portal. And this is one where we'll see. It's interesting because now he's junior eligibility, and the same kind of thing comes into play. Can it work? But he's an all-conference guy again. Unique, very unique athlete, and he's 6'4", 190 pounds. And I think people are surprised he's not jumping in the draft, because his profile is just, he is a pterodactyl out there. But a guy who maybe they're farther down the aisle with, ironically, is another Arizona guy, and he's been written about on the board, on the site. And I don't know if you guys saw this, but Emmanuel Karnley. So Emmanuel Karnley is a 6'3", 184-pound cornerback. He is, according to the transfer portal rankings, a 4-star guy. And according to our guys, has Michigan as one of the top guys on his list. And Michigan very high on this young man, and they're angling to get him on campus. And so, we'll see. I know Brandon Huffman, it reported that Michigan is working to line up a visit. Sounds like he will be at Ole Miss. Sounds like he was at Ole Miss Tuesday and Wednesday. He's going to visit Miami this weekend, and then maybe if things work out for Michigan, it'll be this coming week. But a couple of long corners that Michigan is pursuing, and sounds like Karnley is the guy that sounds more realistic of the two, because I think he's a second year guy, whereas in the case of what's his
Tacario.
face?
Tacario Davis.
Tacario's a third-year guy already. So
Arizona has 29 guys that have entered the transfer portal. 29 guys. No commitments yet. I mean, they're obviously it's inevitable they're gonna have to get some commitments, but 29 players on their roster have entered the portal. Just cannot imagine having to do, because again, I mean, you almost feel like it. You know, if you're Arizona's coaching staff, like this could happen every year, depending on your NIL situation, like depending on just success on the field, individual success. It's like, holy crap. And these are like, again, yeah, you're talking about Tacario Davis is an NFL prospect. They're not losing guys who aren't playing, like who aren't on the field for them. Like they're losing like some of their biggest contributors. So, yeah, one of those programs that school like Michigan can kind of, it's like you're talking about other colleges being pipelines for other colleges, but like, you know, it's like I think Mississippi State is a program that's had a ton of guys leave too. I think Michigan has shown interest in a couple guys. I'd have to go back and look. I know that I feel like that it's been mentioned a few times, but it's like, yeah, it's like there are these programs where guys are just en masse like leaving, and so yeah, but no, both those guys should be options. Yeah, Davis. I mean, again, you're talking about a guy who's probably gonna, even if your team doesn't need a corner that badly, I think he's a guy that a lot of big time schools are still gonna make a run at, right? So, you know, once you get to that level in the portal, not that Michigan won't be involved or can't be involved. It's just we can't sit here and say, you know, think Michigan's got a great shot to land him. You know, there's just too many probably visits to take, too many questions for something like that. But yeah, both those guys, I believe, have gone way up since their high school rankings. So
right, Steve, I know we were talking about this before we came on, but TJ Metcalf is one to look at. How many Arkansas guys are in the portal, Steve? I mean, Arkansas, some of these schools, it's like mass exodus time.
26. 26 have left for Arkansas. 23 have left for Mississippi State. I just went and looked. It's like, how do you even, you know, I don't understand it. So
yeah. So it's safety, and you know, obviously Michigan is going to put forth a lot of effort when it comes to Rod Moore. As you know, Rod Moore weighs his future. What is he going to do? And you got to wait to see what he's going to do. But they're clearly prioritizing having Rod Moore back. But you have to plan. You got to have a contingency plan. And even if Rod Moore is back, you know, having a guy like a TJ Metcalf can really be super beneficial to have another guy in the room. And you remember you're going to get Jaden Mangum back too. So you can have a really fortified safety room if you can add a guy like that. But that'd be a really good addition if you can get him. But obviously a guy there's going to be a lot of competition for Metcalf I'm talking about.
Yeah, it looks like we have him as a high 3-star in the portal, right? Which again, I feel for our guys that are trying to rank these kids too. I mean, it's got to be almost impossible to comb over individual film. I mean, I guess some of these teams have so many guys in it, you just gotta maybe watch a couple series on each side of the ball. You know, maybe pick out some guys, but yeah, no, safety a position where it's like, yeah, Michigan's fine for the most part. I don't think but it's another one of those positions where, well, we saw it this season. They really, at the end of the year, were rotating pretty heavily there. They like to work in a few different guys. You do have a couple, you know, we saw Mason Curtis emerge late last season as a guy who really you can use in a lot of different ways. I feel like if Michigan really wanted to. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like that's more of a safety is like more of a spot where you maybe just want to supplement the roster a little bit. I don't think it's a dire need. You know, like cornerback, I think much more of a position where you just want a couple guys, because that's one position you can never have enough quality players at, right? I mean, that's just the way the world at cornerback, but yeah, no, I mean, I'm just clicking on SECs. They're averaging over 20 outgoing portal entries per team, just about. A couple teams that have a lot less, like Texas, but they're in the playoffs. It's crazy. Kentucky had like 21. It's like I said, the whole operation. How do you figure out who the best guy is for your school? How do you rank these kids on our end? How do you keep up with? It's crazy.
Yeah, man, and I be remiss, Brice, if we didn't touch on this before we got out of here, because everyone wants to know. Hey, is Michigan gonna pick up any Carolina guys? And you know they're gonna scour the Carolina roster, obviously the North Carolina offensive roster, to see if there are any guys that they can grab. The guys that Carolina can't convince to stay in the aftermath of what is surely going to be an influx of money in the aftermath of Bill Belichick. They should be flush with cash once Bill Belichick comes in, right? They're saying that the money is flooding in, so that shouldn't be a problem. But hey, maybe some of those guys like the idea of following Chip Lindsey because they've had guys hit the portal. So, Brice, any buzz, any rumblings? You hearing anything at all about guys in the portal that might be getting pursued by Michigan that are UNC guys?
Yeah, I'm not going to go into names per se, but there's definitely buzz. And again, when you look at the portal, one thing that Steve kind of touched on and I kind of touched on, a lot of it too sometimes is just former connections, right? Or where's the connection here? Where's the connection there? So, for instance, Josh Wallace, what was Michigan's connection there? Mike McRae, right? And then it's like, with even with Virgil, the wideout from Miami, Ohio, got Roy Roundtree. So if Chip, this is the guy that he literally just coached these guys, less than a month ago? I mean, he was going every day into practice with these guys, knows their tendencies, knows kind of what guys are also probably leaning more out the door than trying to stay in, right? And so right now you're seeing guys have entered the portal, have kind of take their names out of the portal as well. I know they had an offensive lineman that a lot of schools liked that is now back for North Carolina that he's planning on staying. But there are names that are taking a look, and they're kind of seeing what their options are because as many fans are very curious, we don't know what Bill Belichick's offense, let alone team program, is going to look like. Like no one has a clue, so
I just can't believe that sentence just happened. Don't know what Bill Belichick's offense at North Carolina is going to look like. I mean, what the hell is going on?
Welcome to college football.
No, I know. It's just, it's
just how it is, right?
You're right,
and
though. You're totally right.
I mean, obviously fans are going to mention Jordan Chip, a name that he's not. But here's the thing. He's not in the portal right now. If he does enter the portal, I think it's very safe to say Michigan would obviously kick the tires there with the obvious connections they have within Providence in that program. But, I mean, a guy, me personally, I know he's probably not. But the running back, Amarian Hampton, that would be a guy that I'd be like, I know you're probably going to go pro, but it's like, oh, my God. Like, that'd be lovely.
Yeah. What's he run for, like 3,100 yards the last 2 seasons or something? Yeah. Yeah, the Chip stuff's interesting just because where's Jaden Davis on the depth chart heading into next season? Does that maybe change his tune regarding Michigan, given that that's kind of the draw? I mean, I know Michigan was in it from the get-go, but yeah, I mean, this is where having deep connections can really help, though. I mean, you think about if, say, Chip Lindsey comes over from North Carolina and he says you should move on this guy, you got to think that means that guy can play, right? That's one of the benefits of having those kind of connections to different programs is you're not going to get, like, bad info on a guy. You know, like if Biff Poggi had anybody on his Charlotte roster that he thought could play at Michigan, right? You know, he's going to straight up tell you, yeah, I think this kid can play. I think he would be a fit. You know, so yeah, I mean, it is having that deep book of connections, or however you want to put it, you know, that where people that you can rely on to give you accurate info can really maybe help dig up some of those diamonds in the rough too. You know, you're talking about UMass, Charlotte, like some of those other programs. So yeah, like that's just,
it's crazy. It's
I mean,
crazy.
seriously, I think I've refreshed our Chris Hummer. I mean, I think 19 guys have entered the portal just since we've been recording. Like, guys that they felt it prudent to report on. Like Justice Haynes, running back for Alabama, entered the portal. Troy Bowles, Sam,
Troy Bowles in the portal?
Said he plans to enter the portal, which means he's going to enter the portal. No, I know that one just popped up, and I'm like, how funny is that? But that's what this is. It's like just talking about a guy off air, and then it's like snap of the finger, he's in the portal.
There you go. Well, hey, there you go, folks. By the time you see this, I will have talked about on the message board. Be on the lookout for Michigan. If that guy hits the portal, look out for Michigan to be a player for that guy. Now that's it. That's one of those exceptions to the rule. You're talking about Georgia, big time defense, right? Winning program. This isn't being buried on the LSU depth chart. You're buried on the LSU depth chart. A bad season, bad defense, can't get on the field. Why aren't you playing there? You're not playing at Georgia? Okay, that's different. You know, if you're like, okay, Jamison Williams when he wasn't playing at Ohio State. Why aren't you playing at Ohio? Why aren't you playing as much? He was playing, but Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. Okay, we know why you aren't getting a lot of balls there. They're three freaking pros. All first-round draft picks. Jackson Smith and Jigba probably would have been if he's not injured, right? Probably would have been a first-round draft pick. That's what that was all about. So there are exceptions to the rule. To me, that's Troy Bowles. So Troy Bowles is in the portal. If you're Michigan, both feet, all over it. And his dad is a heck, all over it. You want that guy. You're both feet running as fast as you can. Sign me up. I want that dude.
Right. Yeah, Jalen Walker just won the Buckus. Raylan Wilson's their other linebacker. I mean,
what a
I
name!
bet you'd have to go back and look, but they've probably recruited as many 5-stars as 4-stars at linebacker. I mean, that's one depth chart is not going to keep me from pursuing a kid that I still like. Yeah, exactly. The Ohio State wide receiver room is a great example, like a great parallel there, because it is. It's like you can't even keep up with the linebackers that Georgia recruits, and the best part for them is they don't really. I think there's like a 50-mile radius that they have to recruit them out of to. I mean, there's just guys just grow into linebackers down there.
I will say too, what's crazy is we're gonna film this and post this, and it's gonna be already outdated with probably more names that we forgot to say that they haven't entered or whatever that they just entered an hour after we get done recording this. It's just that's how the transfer portal is going. It's insane.
Yeah. All right, folks. So that is going to do it for this edition of the Michigan Recruiting Insider. As always, when you want the latest and the greatest, the most accurate recruiting information, you need to go to the MichiganInsider.com. And right now, a special transfer portal-looza, I think I said that right, special transfer portal-looza deal going on, 50% off, but only for a limited time. Don't miss out on this deal. Some of you waited. we had that early signing period special that was 75% off. And we told you it was for a limited time, and some of you just waited and you missed it. You missed the best deal of the year. Told you it wasn't going to last, right? So it's gone, all right? But hey, they came back with another deal because the transfer portal is here. Okay, 50% off is still a damn good deal. We had the search. No one was talking about Chip Lindsey before us. We told you Chip Lindsey's name. That turned out to be true. We told you about the final two and how that all laid out. Got the full breakdown of what he's going to bring to the table. Board just has laid that out. Posted that a little bit later. We're bringing you the portal intel, and we're going to continue to bring that to you. It'll get you all the way through spring ball, into the summer recruiting period, into the season. 50% off. You don't want to miss this deal. You can sign up right now. We'll put the link in the description. Don't miss the 50% off deal. All right? So take advantage of it while you can. Until the next time, thanks for watching this edition of the Michigan Recruiting Insider.